Sage Advice with Melissa is a new informative health and lifestyle show for you to gain knowledge and inspiration to help guide your journey to think, work, and live more powerfully. Whether you're trying to improve your life from a mental, physical, or spiritual journey, Sage Advice with Melissa Coleman, CEO of Sage Skincare, delivers weekly advice from the best experts to provide you with insightful suggestions to allow you to thrive with a better quality of life. It's her mission to guide you through the uncharted waters of health and wellness and to give you a voice on what can help improve your life and your mental, physical, and spiritual journey. Okay, audience, here's Melissa.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sage Advice with Melissa. I am your host, Melissa Coleman. We are in our final week of mental health awareness today. And to wrap up this month, we have the beautiful Dr. Rachel Glick joining us today. And we're talking about mental health and how it impacts our relationships today. So welcome to the show, Rachel.
Happy to be here
Dr.
with you guys.
I know her in two capacities. So yes, but I will stick to the Dr. Glick today. I just want to remind everybody, if you're just now joining us and new to the show, you have plenty of opportunity to find us on all the social media platforms. We're here locally in St. Louis every Saturday from 11 to noon on KWRH 92.9 FM and also simulcasting on KXOK 102.9 FM. And then you can catch us Monday through Fridays on My Genre Radio Network. We're in 100 cities across the U.S., also Canada and New Zealand. So you can catch us there. Just go search your city, find our show. Again, that's Sage Advice with Melissa. You can stay up to date with all that is happening here on our socials on Facebook and Instagram, and that is at Sage Advice with Melissa. So we are going to toot your horn a little bit today and share what amazing skills and things that you have and what you're bringing to the table. So here we go. Okay. So Dr. Glick is a licensed professional counselor with a doctorate in counseling and a master's in organizational psychology. She is known for her compassionate yet challenging approach. Dr. Glick has counseled individuals, couples, and families in private practice for the last 30 years. Dr. Glick is passionate about helping couples navigate through the dark waters of relationship strife, particularly due to the lack of knowledge and mentoring that leaves so many ill-equipped to build happy and long-term relationships. Dr. Glick, like myself, we talk about this a lot here, is also a student of the wisdom of Kabbalah for the past 19 years and has developed a unique approach to working with individuals and couples, integrating conventional psychotherapy with Kabbalistic wisdom. Dr. Glick gets to the heart of what we deal with every day, and that is our relationship with ourselves and with each other. She passionately strives to empower her clients to connect to their true self and embrace growth, both directly informing the niche she has carved in strengthening relationships. Dr. Glick places high priority on her spiritual practice and her own constant growth and hopes to inspire everyone to find, focus on, and strengthen the gift inside of each of their challenges. She has been featured regularly on Fox 2 as a relationship and mental health expert since 2014. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I am so excited to have you. I forgot to introduce my beautiful honorary co-host to my left, Maddie King-Erger. Thank you for being here again.
And as always, I'm super happy and honored to be here.
Yay.
Just because obviously I love Melissa, but it is so inspirational to meet wellness practitioners and like literally live in their own expertise, wisdom, and knowledge for an hour every week. I think it's one of the greatest privileges I have in my life right now. And Rachel, I've been seeing you online, and I'm so excited to see what you have to share with the people today. And if you're open, would you share the beautiful intention you set for the show?
Sure. I don't know if the same thing will come out in this
It'll
moment.
come out perfectly.
Yeah. So I just, I like to plant the seed before doing anything as much as I can remember to do so. And from my heart and soul, I am opening up that whatever it is that whoever is listening to this receives just what they need in order to connect more closely with their own and be in more unity with their soul, aligning their body and their mind and their heart with their soul.
Mhm.
And also that it's helpful for healing and bringing oneself closer to most important people in your life,
Mhm.
and then sharing that onward out.
Yes. Yay.
Yeah.
Yay. I am such a super huge fan of Dr. Glick. So
Oh,
I
so
can't even tell
sweet.
you how excited I am to have you here today. And I think what has been so amazing this month, in the month of mental health awareness, that the different therapists that we have had on, that everybody is really shifting that mindset and focusing on so much more than just the talk therapy. And really
Mhm.
incorporating the whole mind, body, and spirit, which is
Yes.
what we are all about here on the show. So this is going to be an amazing
Right.
show. As I was preparing the questions, I felt like this should be a 2-hour show today, because relationships are such a deep, deep subject, and we have so many different kinds with different people, with our friends, our spouses, our significant others. We just have so many relationships, and they're
there's-
all so
yeah.
different.
Yes. And so many levels to creating healthy, good ones.
Mhm. So that's what we're going to learn
Yes.
about today. So, Dr. Glick, how does your offering and services contribute to or impact health and wellness?
Well, I guess I'll just tell you what I do. So I meet with individuals and couples and families who have adult children, not little kids.
Mhm.
And so it's really very mind, body, and spirit. And it's also very flowing and intuitive. So sometimes I'll start meeting with a couple, and whatever it is that is going on between them is going to definitely awaken what it is that they need to work on inside themselves.
Mhm.
So then a lot of people come in with something a little bit more of a crisis, or like it's already reached the blood, so to speak. It's already showing up that something is like a big wake-up call of some kind, not always.
Mhm.
And then when you ladder in, there's something that's going on in their own mental health and well-being within themselves, some traumas, survival modes that are creating more of a relationship that's more of an ego relationship versus a soul to soul relationship.
Mhm. And let me ask you, with the traumas, because we all have them to some degree
Mhm.
of some
Yes,
sort,
absolutely.
some minor, some major. But as we come together in our relationships, even those of us that may think we have it under control,
Mhm.
do we necessarily always have it under control?
Well, a lot of people have said, I've dealt with that,
Mhm.
but we're there's levels. So you may have really addressed certain kind of layers of what you've experienced as trauma. But then there's still more layers.
Mhm.
So, and I define trauma as just emotional distress, something that is larger than more, either too suddenly, too much, too soon, for the nervous system to be able to handle it. So then you go into what's called out of your window of tolerance.
Mhm.
So you become like hyper aroused or hypo aroused, like either it's too much and you're panicky and racy, or there's a shutdown, feeling numb and disconnected. So there's layers of work that people do to stabilize, to try to get into your window of tolerance. But many of those ways are still using survival modes that are really causing a lot of side effects in one's life.
Mhm.
So, but there's a readiness quotient, like you may not be ready to deal with that next level.
Right.
So,
All right. Well,
yeah.
we're going to.
So it's ongoing. Yeah.
Yes.
We could talk about trauma for the
Yes.
whole hour, actually.
Yes.
But yeah.
So, how does one's mental health impact their relationship?
So I have 4 pillars that I've come up with from just experience being married for, it'll be 35 years coming up. And thank God.
Yes.
And by doing this work almost as long. And the first pillar of the 4 for creating not only a lasting relationship, but a fulfilling one. The first one is responsibility, that we are each responsible for our own happiness and well-being. So it is first for a reason, and it's a big first.
Mm-hmm.
So to the extent that we are not feeling grounded, or that we aren't feeling well, we aren't feeling fulfilled, we aren't feeling full, we aren't feeling balanced, that is going to be an absolute direct connection to the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So you really can't talk about one without talking about the other.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And what are some indicators? Because I think this is huge, because so many of us are not aware that one's mental health might need attention.
Well, you can see it in changes, but also in just consistent habits and behaviors. So if for things like depression and anxiety, for depression, people can have a swing of different things where they can get really lethargic and not want to get out of bed,
Mm-hmm.
and just nothing feels appealing. No connection to anything. People's eating habits can change. They're often maybe having some, God forbid, suicidal thoughts, or just wanting to escape, but they're maybe sharing them. So it's good to be on the lookout for changes when you see in your partner.
Mm-hmm.
Anxious, or, you can tell when people are racy, or they're angry. Often when people are more angry than usual, that means especially for men, there's depression shows up much more as anger
Mm-hmm.
than it tends to in women. So a lot of times in relationships, we get upset with the behavior, of course, because it's often very hurtful and very, but it's one of the things to look out for is what's really wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And first and foremost, we tend to see is, why are you doing this to me? Or you're not fulfilling my needs, but what's off here?
Mm-hmm.
Are you okay?
Right.
And,
right.
Yeah.
Well, can we delve a little bit into that first pillar that you mentioned? Because I love that that's the first pillar. And I think most people, and just even through my own spiritual work, I'm sure as well as all of us at the table, is that we are responsible for our happiness. And how do you address that, with those people that are constantly looking outside? Like how does that pillar play such an important role in the work that you do?
Well, the first thing is awareness, is kind of educating about that.
Mm-hmm.
And but what'll happen is I might see it showing up. There's a lot of tendency to blame, or to see what it is that's missing, and likely those things are missing. So that's kind of the tricky sort of finesse about it. Is it's not, truths are woven in paradox, or woven in yes and also this, not like either or only this one thing. So the main truth about the tendency to look outside is the first step is to practice and build the muscle to check within first with what's going on within me, and what is it that I feel that this is either mirroring that I'm also doing in some even granular way or small way, but also where is it that there's some growth area for me where I tend to be looking outside of myself. And that often takes a lot of repeated remindings, gently though, not to shame a person, because that very thing that is missing is real and it feels very painful, but also to invite the opportunity to connect with oneself first. And then reminding and comforting and reassuring that then when you come from after connecting with oneself first, then it'll have a very different color to it, texture to it, energy to it when you do approach your partner with what it is that you need and want that needs changing. It's a little bit more casual, a little bit lighter, a little bit not so you have to fix this for me kind of energy.
Right. No, I love that perspective.
And something that I remember, that this one was really one of my husband's favorite of the 4. His very favorite is pillar 3. So maybe we'll get to that later. But this one is one of his favorites because we built the beginning of our relationship on he felt responsible for my happiness and I felt he was responsible for my happiness.
Because that's kind of how those previous generations kind of operated.
Exactly.
It was like, you're the woman, you're in the kitchen, and he's taking care of all the things.
Well, and it was also based on our own what we came here to correct in this lifetime. We had similar places in the family and like roles, and so it was like we knew we were meant to be together, but we didn't realize it's because we were here to grow and work on certain things that were kind of coordinating and flowing together. But they initially flowed together, but then they start to bump against one another if you aren't doing the work to really transform. So we both were so excited to really start we were really unprepared for what it took to really have a very happy, successful, long-term relationship. And so that was one of the first things is I needed to connect more with myself, more independently, more, and he needed to let go of feeling so responsible for my happiness. So that was a big relief to him and to me because I had more power then. And no one can fulfill that. And then you're thinking something's wrong with the relationship, but it's really wrong with your idea about how a relationship should operate.
So in your opinion, do you feel like when you're in a relationship with someone that most often, not that there's not issues between you, that the issue in the relationship is usually ourselves individually?
Yes. Like Kabbalistically, we're, taught that we're the center of the universe, but everybody is. Like the whole world was created for me. So we want to see that, but everybody is the same. So it's not like no one is better than another. Right. But in the same way, we want to first see how is this mirroring, and that's part of the second pillar is that we're here to grow, and so we use our friction to awaken whatever is being called for us to grow, and so in that way, we see the relationship as a mirror. So yes, we want to first see, even if it's clearly somebody has done something that you would objectively see as not good to us or around us or missed something, we still want to first look within and say, what is this here for myself as the first step before practice doing this. It's not easy to do, but practice doing that before then approaching what needs to be shifted. And it should be addressed. Things should be addressed. I'm a big believer in that. You don't just like work on yourself and not talk about it.
Right.
But yes, you want to first look and see how is this mirroring something that I know I need to change within me? Either I'm doing the same thing or it's awakening something in my own, like, let's say focusing too much on external. Maybe it's here to show me that I have to get grounded within myself first.
Yes.
I have a couple questions.
Yes. You should.
Okay. So I'll start with the first one, which is that I think I understand what you're describing with the first pillar, which is in fact, you need to harbor or anchor the relationship with yourself. And I very much so have a relationship with myself. And I would say that was mostly born out of isolation in my adolescence. Like I had me and me. So I had to. But I now am able to work with that relationship, and I'm able to create so many relationships because I know how to nurture and to give. Now, not everybody else has this extreme isolation in their adolescence. And so if you have somebody come in and you notice that they don't really have a relationship with themselves, how do you start to walk them on that path?
Great question. So in a session, it's not like systematic, but I did write about it in a more systematic way. But when a person is there in a session, I'll just even start to have them connect more with their body. And so I noticed myself even pointing relationship with yourself, like just start to pivot toward oneself, and also to raise the awareness or introduce the idea that this is actually a relationship. It's not just like a by the way. It's a little abstract to think of a relationship with yourself because you are yourself on one hand, but you can have like sort of, and this is where I like this concept of what's called parts work, internal family systems. So then it's also a really nice way to get to know oneself. It doesn't have to be just this one thing, but there are different parts of us. And so starting to identify, I actually even draw like a map of self-knowledge, I call it. And so it's like, so that's the first that I wrote about is really self-knowledge is the first step in developing a relationship with yourself, is knowing your gifts and your preferences and your passions and the roles you tend to play in life. And that's where I would do the map of self-knowledge. Like, what are your strengths? But what is it that you do that you always feel like you have to do? Like, I have to be the funny one, or I make everybody else happy, or, all these roles we play, and getting to know that and how it serves you and how it may hurt you or how you formed it. So really just getting to know oneself. And then, and the parts I love because it helps to not make it, it's just much more approachable and real to understand myself. But I also introduce the idea that we have a core self or a true self or a higher self or a soul, however, and I get to know the language of how they see the world, so that it tries to match, because it's all the same, but it matters the language that meets the person where they're at. And really that's who they really are, the part of them that is never permanently damaged, no matter what's happened to them or they've done. Part of them that is connected to the source, that is creative and compassionate and certain and has clarity, and that everything is within. So it's a little bit of also some sharing of wisdom and just seeing if it resonates with them. This is just some ideas to think about, to see how that, and then also from there, moving into relationship with self, moves into self-love and self-compassion. And being like your best friend, and like thinking of yourself, like what would you want for the person that you just care about the most, and really talking to yourself like that. Your self-talk, checking your self-talk is a way to build your relationship with yourself. And then there's the self-care, like habits that are good for you or not good for you, and then development is the other part of relationship with that. Where do I know I need to grow and maybe shed something or practice changing something. Not that there isn't a wholeness already that exists, but what am I here to work on? And that's very empowering. And you really feel like proud of yourself, in a sense, in a deep way. So that's the relationship with self and what you love, like your joys, like what brings you joy. What do you just know since you were little, you just love? And
I think that's so beautiful. And it makes so much sense, because when you meet somebody, you cannot possibly come into such a depth of love for that person until you know them on deeper levels. And it's the same thing with yourself. And so, like you were saying, like just starting with an awareness of all of your parts of you without having any sort of shame for any of the parts. Like I was working with Julie and I had her identify. Julie is one of our office babes. She's divine. I was having her like identify her sage and her saboteur inside of her. And I was like, not like feeling any feelings towards them, just like recognizing them, seeing them, their energy, what do they sound like? And I love it. She had a full-on image for her saboteur.
She sure did. They were amazing.
I had her draw them. And so
she's so creative.
She did. Her saboteur was Mighty Mouse, and it was literally a mouse like clinging onto money, like looking super stressed and like antsy and like frantic. And like if you know Julie, you know this exact energy that she can harbor at times. And I go, Mighty Mouse isn't wrong. Mighty Mouse is your scared child that's just trying to protect you. And you can always just hug Mighty Mouse and say, it's okay. Like I see you and it's okay. I'm not going to operate through you, but I see you. And then she identified her sage as what she called Wild Woman. And it was just this like ethereal woman who's colorful and like expressive and just like so out there. And I was like, great, like we're gonna, whenever you're feeling Mighty Mouse, recognize Mighty Mouse, say, thank you for trying to protect me. I'm actually gonna try to move over to Wild Woman, but you can come along for this journey with me. So very much so, like she went on a journey into herself, like you were speaking, into her different parts. And from there, then her and I could work together about shifting her lifestyle, shifting her workspace and everything. But it was really that very basic work of just understanding herself and holding space for all of these parts of her. And And I think that has also started to reflect into her own relationships, that she's better able to hold space for the different aspects of the people in her life, because people are not one dimensional. They are not at all. So I'm hoping now that we can keep going on this pillar journey, because now I'm like eager for like all the pillars.
Yes, we're going to share all those pillars.
Great.
I just want to remind everybody, if you're just now joining us, you're listening to Sage Advice with Melissa. We are here in our final week of mental health awareness. Not that it's the final week, because we need to be aware every day, all day, talking with Dr. Rachel Glick on mental health and its impact on our relationships, primarily our relationship with ourselves, because that's where we need to start. So as we move on, what can I'm getting ahead of myself. How do you know if your relationship is enmeshed or individuated? I got that right. If it's supporting you, your mental health and your growth, or holding you back? I feel like that's a
it's a juicy one, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll have to probably come back after break and get more into it, but we'll let you start us off.
Oh, yes. Okay. It's a very common dilemma or scenario that can be a little hard to discern, because our goal is to become one, is to become unified. But without the first step of our relationship with ourselves, then what we're doing is we're more like globbing on, or it's really the inner child is trying to have a relationship with their inner child in a sense. And then there's no, sort of sage involved to navigate there's not that connected to one's wholeness. So, and sometimes people find that they are able to heal through the relationship, even if they are codependent or they're like turning to each other too much. You can evolve. It's not so black and white where you have to be completely whole and individuated before you even start a relationship. We're on a journey, and we're like, want to think of it as a long runway. But basically, some of the things that are indicators that it's an enmeshed relationship and it's not moving in the right direction is if the first thing is, how is the rest of your life going? Do you find that relationship is a supporter of the work, so to speak, supporter of the other parts of your life? Do you feel like there's energy for it? Do you feel lifted by the relationship? Not as if it's in charge of you, but do you feel like the relationship is a support, and that you find that your professional life and your purpose and your spiritual work and your friendships that are not suffering, and that your relationship with your family, like, are things actually better everywhere else? There tends to be that correlation. It's kind of the first kind of thing to look at.
Yes. I'm going to stop you there just so you can share with everybody real quick how they find you and where to look for information about what you've got going on. And then we're going to come back and get back into this.
Sure. Yeah. So I have, one of the ways I share more, like several times a week, is on Instagram, which is at Dr. Rachel Glick, with no C in Glick. And so I do like 30-second little segments on relationships and our relationship with ourselves, with the 4 pillars. It's all centers around the 4 pillars. And then I'm in private practice. So I have an office here in Clayton. And then I write blogs, usually around every 4 to 7 weeks or so. And I go on Fox 2 and do some sort of segment. So those blogs are on my website.
Okay. Which is Dr. Rachel Glick, no C.
No C in Glick, yeah.
All right, everybody. We're going to be back with you in just a few minutes, so stay tuned.
If you're looking for a new informative health and lifestyle show to gain knowledge and inspiration to help guide your journey to think, work, and live more powerfully, then you need to listen to Sage Advice with Melissa. Now, whether you're trying to improve your life from a mental, physical, or spiritual journey, Sage Advice with Melissa Coleman, CEO of Sage Skincare, delivers weekly advice from industry experts to provide you with insightful suggestions to allow you to thrive with a better quality of life. Melissa's mission: to guide you through the uncharted waters of health and wellness and to give you a voice to help improve your life. So be sure to tune in to Melissa. You'll be glad you did.
Hey, listeners, saying thanks to your customers is nice and polite, but expressing your gratitude in memorable and ongoing ways can boost your business. At Promo Experts LLC, we exceed our customers' expectations. For over 20 years, our product knowledge and experience has helped them with their marketing initiatives and trade show graphics. We are happy to put that experience to work for you. Quality products, great customer service, and prices are our number one priority. We work with you to find unique, creative, and new ideas that fit your image and expectations, helping you build strong relationships with your customers. When you select Promo Experts as your marketing partner, we help you to see more than the big picture. For more information about this exciting opportunity, contact Diane Carson, President, at 636-458-5241. That's 636-458-5241. Let Promo Experts help you to move your business brand beyond the bland.
Is your business struggling with getting found online? Are you having a hard time finding a marketing company that you can trust? Look no further than Vivial. At Vivial, we are experts at helping connect buyers to consumers by our innovative marketing strategies with proven methods that help businesses connect to their target demographic. For a free consultation, call Anthony today at 314-437-1906. That's 314-437-1906.
Have you always wanted to write your own book but don't know where to start? Publishing Concepts, a publishing company located right here in St. Louis, offers everything from consulting, book printing, copyrights, ISBNs and barcodes, print book layout, ebook and iBook layout, graphic design, cover design, ghostwriting, typing and editing, distribution, marketing, and more for an affordable price. Visit publishingconceptsllc.com or just Google Publishing Concepts to get started today, or call 314-781-8880. That's 314-781-8880. Publishing Concepts. We help you sell more books.
So we were still talking about the mesh.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to part 2 of Sage Advice with Melissa. I am your host, Melissa Coleman. We're here with my honorary co-host, Maddie King-Erger. We are here with Dr. Rachel Glick today, talking about mental health and its impact on our relationships. And we left the first half of the show really getting into our relationship with our partner and knowing if it's enmeshed or individuated. So I'm going to let you kind of dive a little bit deeper into that, and then we'll get into what we were talking about on break, because that was very fascinating. And you know, our relationships with our partners are, like, I think, our most divine relationships, in my opinion. And they can be challenging. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
let's go hand in hand.
They do. They do. So
yes, I always talk about what a fan I am of long-term committed relationships, because there's just no way we can see that mirroring of ourselves, and we can really stay more in our own little incubator, so to speak. So, and one of the things that I also like to remind is that it's normal that it's hard. A lot of us have a perception it's supposed to be easier, and it's just not reality. You know, accepting that makes such a big difference.
Yeah, I love that you said it's hard, because my sister worked at Creve Coeur Pharmacy, if you remember that from years ago, and she just adored the two owners. And right before she was getting married and getting ready to leave, she told Marvin, she goes, I want my relationship to be like yours and Sharon's. And he's like, yeah, it was not always like this.
Right.
He's like, you need to know this is the hardest job you're going to have. And he goes, and the work you put into it is what makes it good on the end.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
yes. So in a meshed relationship is where the relationship with oneself is weakened to a degree that we are really looking to the other to fulfill what we didn't get from our parents or we never had in our lives. And we just like, we were really trying to usurp and take that energy and make it our own.
Mhm.
And so there is a lot of compensating that goes on in a natural relationship, but it goes so far that the other is like filling a hole that you've not really worked on healing.
Mhm.
But often there's a lack of awareness that that's what's happening, and all you see is what's wrong with the other. And that's where sometimes mental illness, it's a little harder to work with, our personality disorders, for example,
Mhm.
which vary in terms of their degree of insight. The extent to which there's insight, you can work with those, but often people can't even see it.
Mhm.
So,
Sense.
but we're all on a journey, and you just like every relationship is here to keep helping us to evolve, to go closer to our own essence and our own, like fulfill what we're here to fulfill.
Mhm.
So, but an individuated relationship is one where you're more connected with your own sense of self and truth, and essence and wholeness and purpose and happiness. You know what you love, and you really enjoy your own company, and then when you come together, it's like you're holding hands. This is what Karen Berg said, I remember, and I love this, holding hands facing out into the world. So your two wholes coming together. And that's not just, like I said, a zero-sum game that like you can connect once you do that. But to the extent that you do, or both are working on that, then you can join into oneness without losing oneself. You're coming with yourself.
Mhm.
And so it's a different way of unifying than it is when there isn't that first initial sense of connecting with your own power source.
Mhm. And how does it work? Let's say one half of that relationship is much more individuated
Yes.
than the other partner.
Yeah.
How can that impact? Because, you could have somebody that's very self-sufficient, self-regulated, moving themselves forward. But I feel like in those relationships, it can be
Mhm.
very hard for the one that is not moving
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
create that pull and impact in the
Yeah.
relationship.
Well, I think you can do your best to find middle ground of ways and in a language that the other who is a little more resistant to growing,
Mhm.
that they can gradually take steps and to becoming more of an individual and less dependent on the relationship. But there's also the other side where people who have an avoidant type of attachment style, and their growth is really more on coming to terms and coming more comfortable with intimacy.
Mhm.
But I think that you do your best to navigate your differences, and I think a lot of times people find that when they see some level of growth in their partner, it doesn't have to be the same as their own, that it can be still fulfilling. But sometimes people, it just may have not work out. It might be that they're not on the same frequency anymore.
Mhm.
So once you start changing, which is what we're here to do, if there isn't that flexibility in the relationship for the change to also happen with the partner and together, then that's when relationships expire. And it's not wrong or bad. That's just natural.
Mhm. Mhm. No, I like that. And what can partners do when their loved one is struggling with their mental health? Like if there
Mhm.
is more of you're dealing with bipolar or those kinds of
Yes.
things, because that brings in a whole nother
Yes.
element.
So something that it depends if it's been ongoing and or if it's just like something happened recent, and
Can some of that be recent?
sometimes people have adult onsets of,
Okay.
or someone, they have a loss that knocks them down, or they have childhood issues that they never dealt with. And then it's like they hit sort of a wall with them.
Okay.
Or really being unhappy at work can really, there's lots of things that can trigger mental health
Mhm.
that either was already brewing in there or that can start to happen. And people can feel trapped or, and in relationships, once people start having kids, it also more things start showing up because you can't focus as much on the relationship as you did at the beginning, which is another whole topic of how to
Right.
navigate that. But I think that if you see your partner, if there are some issues with them in their mental health, often the partner who is more balanced, let's say, for lack of a better way of saying it,
Mhm.
can start to feel like, I don't know how I can stay in this relationship. It becomes very unfulfilling.
Right.
But what I like to encourage is that you don't want to leave people when they're down. That's not, but it's also good to have some parameters that we're both remembering pillar one. We're each responsible for our happiness and well-being. So that is our job as partners is to do what we can do to be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
They can't do that for us, and we can't expect our partners to. It's a healthy expectation is that you're going to take care of your health,
Mm-hmm.
and that includes your mental health. So I encourage people to set some parameters that, this is what it looks like to me to be working on your mental health. And if they're open to it, then if they're hesitant to go, so you go with them. I've gone and I've sat in a reception area with a friend who needed to go to a therapist, and she was just not taking the steps. So I said, let's just go together.
Mm-hmm.
I just sat in the reception area, and it just, like you can do that with your partner. Let's just go. I'll go with you. And you're going to try to gently do it. And if there's really a lot of resistance, then you can also make it very clear what your parameters are. I'm here for you, but this is what I'm noticing, and you need to feel better.
Mm-hmm.
And I also, just to be a partner in a relationship, you need to take care of your health. So it looks like this, that you go to a therapist, a psychotherapist, you go to a doctor, you go to a psychiatrist if it's appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
And you make it very specific of this is what, and by this time, let's check back in 6 months,
Right.
with some sort of guidelines
Mm-hmm.
or boundaries of sorts.
Absolutely. And while we were on commercial break, we were talking about self-regulation, which we talk about here, and you brought up co-regulation. So how does the co-regulating within a relationship come into play?
So I'll just back up a little bit about the little context around that,
Mhm.
which is this, I mentioned earlier, the idea of window of tolerance. And so if you
Mhm.
picture 3 rows, stacked on top of each other, like a chart with 3 rows. And in the middle is the range that's our window of tolerance. And then
Mhm.
above that, the top of that is when you're hyper aroused, and it's racing and anxious and feeling unsafe and angry and irritable. And then below that is when we're hypo-aroused, which is where we feel shut down and numb and disconnected and shame typically. So couples, when you're in your window of tolerance in that center row, that is when it's fun. That's when you can grow. That's when you can connect. That's when you can feel that joy and that oneness together. And often couples don't realize how much they're actually in above or below the window of tolerance.
Mhm.
So each person is also responsible for regulating themselves, and that's part of what can be taught in couples therapy and doing some individual work as well of what helps you. What are your glimmers? It's called. It was coined by Deb Dana, which are like the things that make you feel warm, safe, and connected in your mind, in your body, in your activity, whatever you do that do that. But couples can also co-regulate,
Mhm.
where they can kind of step aside from the conflict if they can. If not, then couples need to go and take some space with the understanding that this is so that we can come back together when we're in our window of tolerance, so we can be
That makes
productive with
sense.
connecting and learning from this. Often the first thing to do is to separate from the trigger. But another thing is that couples can co-regulate and talk about it when it's neutral. What are the ways that would work for us to co-regulate when we start to get elevated and we start to get reactive with each other? And some people like sit knee to knee, eye to eye, knee to knee, and just breathe. Or you can sit cross-legged on the floor, close enough to each other where each can put their hand on each other's heart and just feel each other's breath.
That seems so powerful.
It is, but it takes to do that. You already have to be owning your experience and ready for that level of making that choice.
Mhm.
So if you aren't ready for that, then it's important to know what your go-tos are to help yourself feel calm and safe and connected before you co-regulate. And you can ask one another, like, what helps you feel calmer when we start getting active? Some people just want a hug. Some people want to tell a joke.
Mhm.
Laughing is a great way to create that, grounding or levity in the situation.
Yeah. I like the laughter.
Yeah.
That's my jam. So, let me get to my next question, because this was a multi-part question. What is in their wheelhouse of control and what is not in their control, and how much grace do you give to your partner
When they're dealing with mental health. Yes. Well, there's a range of things. There's also addictions, and there's, again, the personality disorders, or I think I sort of mentioned that, where you give people some time. sometimes people go and spend, if you're here for the long haul, people go through harder chapters in their life.
Right.
But I still think it's important to have, there's the in Kabbalah, we learn about the different columns. There's the right column, which is mercy and kindness and second chances and more time and space and grace. And then there's left column, which is tough love and consequences and boundaries and limits and expectations. So, and we're the central column. We're the one deciding the free will of like, is this a time for a right column? Is this a time for some mercy? Or is this a time for, but you want to think about what's best for them.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking about what's best for them is going to include what's best for you too, because you're not going to be the best version of yourself in the relationship if at some point there isn't some sort of shift where you can. So there may be time where you decide you're giving them grace, that they just had a trigger. Like, let's say something happened and they just saw, or they had their mother call when they hadn't talked to their mother in 20 years or something. You give them grace, during that period, or they lost their job, and it can be, and I'm not someone who's quick to say, just leave.
Right.
But then really then at a certain point though, it is important to bring that left column in of these are the expectations. You may not be able to see it now, or you may be scared to go. But this is, like lean into this and trust me that this is the steps you at least need to see some effort being made.
Mm-hmm. Yes. No, that makes a lot of sense.
And then it's important to also grieve if you're committed for the long haul and the person just will be struggling with mental health, then it's also important to work on your own expectations and your own, like, what is it bringing up for you? How is it similar to maybe something you've experienced? And likely it will mirror or be a pattern because it will be for your growth too. So it's really customized how long a person should give grace. When is it time to maybe take a step that they want to be a support, but not necessarily in the same form in the relationship.
Ooh, it is a hard.
It is. It's not easy.
hard road
Yeah,
managing
exactly.
relationships, really of
Yes.
any kind.
And it's very, I just want to also validate for those who are in a relationship with somebody who really struggles with mental illness. It is very draining. And it's not to shame the person who has it. It's hard on them too, believe me.
Yes.
But it's just that organizations like NAMI, National Alliance of Mental Illness, and they have like support. And just, it's one of the things that is the first thing that they share is that it is draining and you have to really work on taking care of yourself and making sure that you're filling your own cup. And
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
I feel like that is such a struggle here. I mean, probably everywhere in the world, but I was promoting an upcoming offering that I have, which is inner child work, and I had invited somebody. They were like, "Thank you so much for inviting me, but I really can't at this time because my father passed, and since then I've just been spending all this time with my mom and giving her all of that." I go, "I think that's really beautiful, but you should also be giving to yourself and nourishing yourself. Not that you need to come and do my experience, just that you need to be doing something for yourself." And she was like, yeah. Like, God will make sure that, my cup is filled. And I was like, okay, like, not really. Like, you will make sure your cup is filled. And I think people think of that as being selfish. And I have flipped the script, to say, if I do not fill my cup, then other people will not receive the highest vibration from me. So it's to be selfish for me not to fill up my cup, because then I'm not pouring out the good juice. I'm pouring out the like super like bad sugary juice, and I don't want to be doing that. No toxicity. So I wonder if people can flip the script on what does it mean to show up for a good relationship. Does it mean to give all of yourself even when you aren't feeling good yourself? No. No. How do you have to counsel people through that as well? Of
Yes.
like, okay, and what kind of ways do you bring them into that space of really validating their own need to take care of themselves first and foremost?
For a lot of people, it's a very addictive habit. That's usually not the first time that it's showing up in their life of focusing so much on caring for someone else. And so that may be part of their lesson is to, and sometimes, it often will escalate until it's so loud that, it just is really planting seeds that are trying to poke holes in the belief system that is often unconscious, that our worth is based on, and our safety and our is based on giving to others to the point of not being in touch with oneself, like in an imbalanced way of giving. And it can be a way to not have to deal with oneself. It's just to keep giving. And that's not always the case. Some people are presented, but I just see it that it often comes in the same way, that if they keep being bombarded with the needs that are so great from others, that likely it's the universe is really speaking loudly to them. And in the physical reality, it's real. It's not like it's not real, and they do have people to take care of. But even amidst that, how is it that they can redo the belief system, the limited belief about what's going to keep them safe, or what is it that they need to do in order to feel like they can relax, is when I get everybody else okay first. And so, it's an iterative process and finding concrete ways that don't make people feel like it's not doable, and also repeating and then finding like simple actions that they can do that will help them honor themselves and choose themselves, and or even to just detach emotionally, like they may be doing the same actions, but to be more centered and grounded in themselves while they're doing it.
Yeah.
So not what you do, but how you do it.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which comes back to that intention you set, like at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I think it makes such a difference. Like even when we sage our office, or I sage my space to clear energy, to make it a more warm and conducive space to work and build something in this lifetime.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just want to remind you, if you're just now joining us, you're listening to Sage Advice with Melissa. I am your host, Melissa Coleman. I am here today with my co-host, Maddie King Erger, and Dr. Rachel Glick. We're finishing up our month of mental health and awareness, and today we are all about mental health and the impact on our relationships. We touched a little bit in the first half about the spiritual component. So how can couples have a more spiritual connection?
This is one of my very favorite
I know
topics.
it is.
Everything we're talking about is pointing towards having a more spiritual
Yeah.
connection, something that I wrote an article recently for Mind Body Green on having a more spiritual relationship. And as I was writing, I was realizing it's the first and foremost is to have all the components that help you have a closer connection that you're working. All the 4 pillars are a spiritual relationship.
Will you share with us the other pillars?
Sure. So the first pillar is the key word is responsible. We're each responsible for our own happiness and well-being. And the second one is growth, that we use our friction for the sake of growing individually and together more closely. The third is priority, where we each make each other the most important other person in our lives, other than our relation with ourselves, and in a way that they know it, like really making sure that they know that you're my number one, like the most important person to me. And the fourth is purpose, is some sort of generosity toward not just it's wonderful to give to your family and your children, but that's sort of an extension of ourselves, but it's really also outward facing, using your gifts and your resources and your money and your time and your talent, the 3 T's, time, treasure, talent, to see how you might use your love and your connection and your joining together for something that will improve the world in either little ways and or big ways, but continually looking for ways you can do that.
And I have a question around the purpose, because I feel like, it's such a big buzzword today about living in our purpose, finding our purpose, and I feel like just in interactions I've had, people I know, that the purpose piece often seems to be a driver of the mental piece. Like they are lost or don't know what direction or where to go. So how do you feel like that purpose piece is sometimes more at the top of the list when starting sometimes than the other pillars that you
that's
work
interesting
on?
that you say that, because in some ways I will consider the fourth one like a graduation, because most of us are sort of working on still what we need and our maturity level, and then once, getting more grounded in that and more maturing, then wanting to take the relationship out into the world. It can be also on a soul level as we are evolving. The more elevated souls, whatever lifetime that means, they are more for the world. That's what a true soulmate is when you're ready to have your relationship be focused on the world, and all the gifts and blessings happen on the side, but they happen. But it's called reflective light. It comes back to you. It's not like you're seeking it, but it reflects back to you. But I also find that you can jumpstart, like you just said, adding that sweetness to the relationship by, in the midst of what you're still working on and what you're trying to create together, or having your needs met, or be happy together, spend some time going and doing something that's for the sake of others together, or support each other's in your own individual way of doing it. But best if you can find something that you also can talk about it and watch each other engage in what's called moral beauty, just seeing your partner be kind and generous and sharing. And it just levels out everything else. It really doesn't matter as much. So I like the idea of jumping to 4 first.
I feel like it's a first sometimes.
I
for some people.
100% agree with you.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, like always going back and forth, like up and down the tree, as I say, like it's all good to jump in to as well.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I feel like that circles right back to the spirituality component, that if you realize that you're doing something purposeful that is beyond you, then I think it really makes a relationship firm when you realize you're not just meant to be together for each other, but you're meant to be each other for the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just like it helps individuals' mental health to have a purpose. Like, so much of our feelings are connected to our consciousness. So we want our consciousness to be stronger than our feelings and let that be in charge. And so when we have a consciousness of, I have value, I have a purpose, and I'm doing something, even if it's really small, that is important, that no one else can do, that no one has ever done or will ever do, that I need to do, then you get this energy. You get this, people's mental health is very influenced by their consciousness.
Absolutely. I am so sad to say we have to wrap things up. I feel like we, again, have hours of conversation left in us. But please, again, share one more time how everybody finds you and stays up to date on all the things that you're doing. And we will, on our socials, post, your blog that you left with us and all the things that you've mentioned here today.
Great.
So yes.
Yeah. So on Instagram, it's at Dr. Rachel Glick, DrRachelGlik. And it's the same as my website. And that's the main ways.
All right. And do you want to leave anybody with a little tip or wisdom to?
Well, I guess I just, from my heart to yours, wish you all the very best on your journey, and to keep in mind that wherever you are is exactly where you need to be. And on some level, nothing is missing. It's just part of a process.
Yes.
And it's a good one.
Yes. And just to add to that, because I think what I love about Kabbalah that we study is that every part of our journey is good, even if it's not always good.
Yeah, even if we can't see it,
yes,
it's not revealed, but it's concealed, but it's still whole and nothing is missing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. We will see you again next week. As we like to leave you, health is a state of mind, wellness is a state of being. Be good, everyone, and take care.
So you were at the home health care. How long were you there, and what made you finally decide to journey on your own?
Well, what happened was we got married in 1993, husband and I.
Okay.
And husband was already working. But what happened was husband came home with an $800 line
is back in '93.
This is back in 1993.
Woo, that was an expensive
Yeah.
lawnmower.
That thing better make you breakfast.
Right.
And this right here, this right here gonna really tell y'all age because he bought it from Big